Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Kevin. I will be the chair for this year's grand final of high school ALSA E-Comp. Congratulations for making it this far. It's truly a noteworthy achievement. Before we start the debate, I'd just like to do a quick roll call. Is government side already here?
Yes, we're here, but can we like one of my teammates is like want to go to the toilet? Can we?
Yeah, sure.
thank you.
Just tell us when you come back. Yeah. For opposition, are you complete?
Opposition here.
Okay, I'll just like to do a quick roll call on the panelists. Is Gio here?
Here.
Is Matthew here?
I'm here.
Is Ka Akbar here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Is Nahadatu here?
Here.
Okay, so it seems that everyone is complete. So while waiting for the member of government to come back, just a quick notes on technicalities. Number one, don't forget to mention your POI preference. Second is your gender pronoun. And lastly, I'll be sharing the stopwatch by now. Wait, give me one sec. I'll be sharing the stopwatch. If, for example, but please do also time yourself, because if I have internet issues or if anything happens, you can just go and check your own timer. And please, for everyone, do so for your opponents too. So yeah, if your teammate is back, we can start the debate. Just please do tell us. Yeah, we'll wait for a while. Thank you.
Hi, we're complete.
Okay, fantastic. So debating on the motion, this House will significantly limit media coverage on ongoing trials. To open the case of government, we call on the Prime Minister. The floor is yours. Here.
Okay, I think I am audible, but just for confirmation. Am I audible?
I think your voice quite small. Can anyone else reconfirm for me, or is it just me?
Quite small for me too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
How
try to
about now?
speak bigger. Try to speak one sentence a little bit loud. Check.
I'll just read the motion. Yeah. This House will significantly limit the media coverage on ongoing trials. Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay, but try to speak louder during your speech, yeah, just to make sure that everyone can hear you.
Okay. Wait, let me set my timer. Starting a PR preference just by chat. Gender pronouns she, her, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. It is very sad to know the fact that bad guys are decided to be not guilty just because media made a mistake on the delivery of the statements, making society ended up standing on the wrong side of the case. This is very harmful, right? 3 points of setup. 1, under government side, we are going to significantly limit media coverage, unlike media channel or news, to make an ongoing trial a form of entertainment to the wide public. 2, the trials that we're talking about is a case like has like high level of demand to be streamed, like celebrity cases or like public figure cases, right? But then 3, what side opposition needs to prove to us is why media coverage makes take a huge role in ongoing trials. Why are they very beneficial for the court to make a decision making? Moving into my arguments, why is it principally justified to limit media coverage on ongoing trials? Before that, quick characterization on how media portrays ongoing trials. Realize that news stories about recent crimes are typically skewed and one-sided, like clickbaited to gain people's attention, often assuming that the defendant is already guilty. Moreover, these stories frequently include prejudicial information that is rarely allowed during the actual crime trial, right? This kind of evidence can include the case, can include the accused past criminal story, right? Whether or not it's relevant to the case or not. Sensationalized description of the crime and inflammatory statements by arresting officers or prosecutors, right? At in the often emotional interviews with relatives of the deceased, most of whom openly stated that their beliefs that the accused is guilty, and it can be seen like virtually everyone with an interest in the case has their minds made up before the jury is even selected. How society will most likely to reach this? With the current strand of the cases through crime friends, netizens that always have comments on someone's problem will discussing about this, creating a big euphoria that everyone has a say to the case that is going on. Thus, this kind of characterization are really harmful, especially when they are easily influenced by the heading news that are like clickbaiting. People can become irrational because their fault of how bad media portraying about this, right? But then 2 points of analysis here. 1, let's talk about the problem here. When ongoing trials is something which is private. Three analysis. A, the purpose of CGS. You need to agree that CGS needs to protect suspect from society. But when media coverage ongoing trials, it opens the chance for suspect to be treated badly in society. Therefore, under their side, they fail to fulfill the purpose of CGS in protection level, right? But then B, this is disrupting the process of the case. We think the moment when ongoing trials are like exposed and headed by news reporters like etc., there will be fear and pressure of the suspect to the judges, and as how now it affects like their capability to give objection statement, to give witness in their court. Because when you like protest or getting hate comments, etc., or people who actually are the victim and are being harmed are going to be afraid to speak up, since they know that these people who do the harm is going to have society's voices. This proves to you that exposing them to the media really hindering the progress of the case, right? And this is very harmful, because that ongoing trials is something that you need to solve ASAP, and there should not be a delay due to the how urgent the case is, right? But then C, this also include in the family's protection. Notice how the media is very profit-oriented. They provide what they think society wants to see, making them tend to clickbaiting headlines, etc. Example, you are a victim of a case, then the media also talks about how your family treats you before, how then you are getting this kind of situation because how your family normalizes all odd things, etc. But then let's talk about the best case scenario, where media somehow is not exaggerating the case. We think then this is not necessarily needed, since media doesn't really take any huge part in a court decision making, right? If opposition talks about how society needs spices and entertainment in the media, we still think this is not exclusive anyway, since entertainment can be found in any other ways, right? But with these three analysis, we believe panels already see how CGS already fail at the time you go with side opposition. But then second problem here, this creates a public bias, A, for society. By the characterization I stated before, these people are very easily manipulated to be judgmental, right? Society will overreact with this because they attach to the emotion, by their emotion, to the news itself. What are they going to do? They're going to hate comments, make a hateful video of TikToks, giving several critics, protesting and demanding to punish the suspect, saying in social media that a certain suspect deserves to be punished and something like that. But then B, for public judges, a lot of court that doesn't use judges but public duty. This is really harmful, because like jury duty or even the court itself are also humans, as how their brain is influenced as their daily information, their environment nuance, and something like that, as how humans do something because we are influenced by something, and we believe that it is also work for public judges if they perceive that and emotional information, their actions will also be influenced by that, right? As how there are already an extreme assumptions about the prosecutors and something like that. Then why is this crucial? This is really damaging the case, the suspect, and everything about the case, as how this predicts trial, and this impacts the accuser life as a whole. Therefore, we need to make the ongoing trials have to be fair, right? But then third problem here, they are not going to be, there's no acceptance in rehabilitation. We think this kind of public bias will affect how people perceive their suspect, as how rehabilitation will not work under their side, because people already have judgmental characteristic, as how society judging them, thinking that they're inherently bad people, then they don't deserve to be rehabilitated, right? What is the implication? This suspect cannot be functional again, because there is already judgmental coming from society and makes them lose their chance, while we think in the case it's not that heavy and they already get punished, then they deserve a chance to rehabilitate themselves, right? But then let's talk about the fourth point here, about the best case scenario that might happen on the opposition side. Even if public's opinion actually are standing on the right decision in the court, we still think that they are not necessarily needed. Two reasons why it is enough to make right decision with the public's opinion. A, judges are qualified professionals, while public society don't understand the law and that deep, right? They only make decision based on what their first impression towards the actors in the court. But then B, even if side opposition talks about how public society have the eyes of the witness, we think that this is already being provided by the court itself, where they invite witness to be on this court formally. This proves to you public opinion coming from what media gives doesn't take an impact. But then moving on to my second point of analysis about the solvency. One, impartiality. Justice can be reached when we don't do guys. Realize how even judges are being filtered before taking a case, and they are they actually related to the suspect or even the victim. This is important, since the decision reason for a case has to be the fetus, right? But then to second point here, this makes actors focus on the case without unnecessarily actors knowing the ongoing case. Then there will be less likely assumption or like hopes, etc., making the judge and the witness don't have to like give statements while thinking of what public might react. They don't have to sugarcoat their statements, right? So by this reason, vote for side government.
Thank you so much for that fine speech, PM, to open the case of up. You have up, so it's yours, you're here.
Check, am I audible?
Yeah, perfectly audible.
Wait, setting my timer first. Okay, in the meantime, my gender pronouns is your, her. If you want to POI, just chat in chat box and yeah. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Having a portrayal of silence to the society, not giving a fact and keep it as a secret is not a big deal to begin with. Society deserves to watch it and know upon what cases that their country do. What does the emotion means that what and what we want? 3 point then. First, those trials are not get the exposure from the media. We will ban this in government side. They will ban the society to expose to the media and social media, where TV and phone are one of the most grounded media, where all layer of society watch it. Right? Means less society know the current progress of this in government side, like how it covering streaming upon trial of fraud crimes, like the streaming of Sambo trials and Mina and Jessica Sayanida coffee cases, right? Second, media will follow the law rules. So if the trial is closed trial, like divorce cases or personal cases, media will not do streaming also in our side. So just waiting for the comment after the conflicted actor finish the trial, right? Thirdly, media will improve the quality of information. Must be valid and reliable. So if there is something exaggerated, misleading, the media will be able to hold on liable and showing responsibility to clarify. And if it is necessary, they will do public apology and get punishment for the bad journals. We as opposition believe that it's really unjustified and bad for justice system. Therefore, opposition doesn't want to limit the media coverage on ongoing trial. This is for the sake of transparency and what's going on. We don't see any kind of harm in here, which I will show you in my cases. Government needs to defend on a country that have less progress. They don't have more urgency to finish the trial and less progress happen. What opposition need to explain is that first, why we must need to expose is supporting the society and etc. Second, why in government side it creates a public backlash, and thirdly, why we can protect the most vulnerable actor in this debate. We can take government burden throwing. We win this debate. Government claim upon media is very sensational, and they are saying that people bias and harm the rehabilitation. First, they say media is very, very sensational. We're really questioning the likelihood and link back, assuming that why, but one, if media are so sensational, if there is a fact from these cases, they will speaking the fact in any way. They will not blame the people who are not fails, right? Second, there is platform of discussion where it's exclusively happening on our side. Public opinion, they are very critical. I will explain more in my argument. And this purpose of media, where we must clarify, not close it. If you close it, you will seen as suspicious here. Thirdly, there is compensation for people who get misportrayal from media, because media also professional and don't want to get a massive judgment from the society also, right? Fourth, even if yes, they are so sensational, means that what we must do is to improve how we spread the message, not deleting this kind of message, right? Government argument are not important at all to be counted. Second, they say that people bias and harm to the rehabilitation, yada, yada, yada. First, what's the correlation? We are so confused about this kind of point. Rehabilitation will be decided by the expert judge also, right? So the amount of punishment to rehabilitate them will be fairly decided in any way, so that we are very proud to oppose. 3 arguments on my speech. Also, all of that will respond to their point. First argument, why we need to expose more about trial that is going on. First, media coverage does significantly matter to transparency and detailed information to all society. Why that's so? A, informing what happened during trial to mitigate misconduct trial, not these judges, lawyers, probatators, and prosecutors will be exposed during trial. So if there is something suspicious, we can do check and balance between a lot layer of society, like expert analysis and public opinion, why it could be done and why these mechanisms are more reliable. A, expert analysis and comment. Entire ongoing trial streaming, there will always law experts who are invited to the television and give reaction and comment. Some people will get educated and understand what's going on what's correct, on wrong and wrong during the trial procedure. These education are so important to show critics to the pasal or article like omnibus law or ambigu law, where people can be charged for those, right? Those education are so important because it can make the critic where law is supposed to protect the society. Means that if they don't know at the very beginning, we are not protect them if you follow government side, where their mitigation also cannot fly in this debate. B. Public opinion to push something suspicious. Like case of the date of Brigadier Joshua, which was exposed wrong by police and arrest the wrong person. Public gives so strong reaction and criticism. It makes strong criticism and make evaluation. That's why Sambo cases is exposed now, and police can briefly arrest Sambo and her wife. Indonesia and many developing countries based on viral justice system, right? Where there is a viral cases, they will get government attention, meaning if you want to survive in these big cases, we must expose it, right? Compare when we bring so private and close a lot of important information, the progress of justice system will be hampered. Less public opinion from society and from expert on what happen, right? Means that more misleading verdict will be happen. They fail to punish or not put maximal result on that, right? Therefore, we need to expose it. Second argument that why then in government it creates public backlash, which is so important. Now government always glorify upon they are the one that society can rely on. Society can live comfortable in this country. They can access information that is needed and easier. Why then in government side it creates public backlash? It's the moment where society will distrust the justice system. There will be a lot of question from the society. Why then they are not know this kind of information? Why it's very important to not create a public backlash? Because society are the one who get and do the law. Means that they are not supporting. If they are not supporting us, the progress of it will be hampered. Less people trust us. Meanwhile, to make our goal happen, we need a lot of support from the society. Thus, government mechanism cannot run well and create a lot of hate and distrust to the society, right? Third argument that why then in our side it creates a victim closure. Being a victim of some cases are so miserable, especially where you are still alive. A lot of trauma must carry on your daily life. But in this case, a victim relative does demand the trial could be exposed to assess the real justice, right? Like how? One, arresting the correct perpetrator. It's only happened maximal in our side where the public discourse are happen a lot critic from many people are happen. Second, justice in fair punishment, much more likely government will not get this goal because hard for them to search more protection, right? Hard for the victim to search it. Since less people know about those kind of cases, they don't know because the country are so silent, etc. If there is injustice decision, people will defend the victim. So one, they can do a lot of critics, right? They can spread on social media, they can make it more viral, etc. Which is I already explained more in my first argument. Second, accessing this case to appeal court, right? There will be a top class lawyer who will be willing to help and assess, like how Hotman Paris is willing to have the case of Brigadier J and other cases like in Palembang or even Alfamart Chocolato's cases. It proves to you that media could trigger more assistance to the victim, right? When these cases are so big and being exposed, it's helping a small people when they must facing a big and rich institution. It's very important because sometimes criminal justice is so ambiguous and flexible, like what we already characterize, meaning that many of rich people can weaponize this to the poor one. To handle this, we must expose to give society sympathy, but also social punishment that the one who caused the problem, right? Even if that they want to say it's very harmful because it's before the decision and etc. But if they are proven to be right, they will not get judgment in any way. But if the verdict are questionable and very suspicious, much more likely we can open again the discussion. And moreover, the victim who's still afraid to go to CGS, maybe they have trust issue on that, or they are afraid to being judged. For example, like how they get rape cases, for example, they will brave to speak up in our side when there is a good media platform who sincerely help them in assisting the case, right? Therefore, the case that they are afraid, we are very proud to.
Thank you so much for the speech, LO. To continue on the case of government, DPM, so it's yours. Here.
Am I audible?
Try to speak again.
Okay. Am I visible?
Yep, you're visible.
Okay, I want to open my timer app. My pronouns is theorem. I will accept one POI maybe. I will flag when I want to do it. Wait, my GDocs is loading. Opening my timer app. Sorry for the background noise. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. One clarification before moving on into the question, right? Number one, I think that they're being incredibly denial on what we bring from the very first slide, right? Wayne gave you the characteristics upon how judges are still human, therefore their mindset can be influenced by what the media says, and how media is not as good as what you think because they are profit oriented and will do anything in order to gain attention and spotlight. You need to explain why media has the ability to be always good and morally correct, for example. Moving into my clashes, right? I will have 2 clashes. Number one on protection of privacy, second on rehabilitation, but thirdly on my extension on the romanticization of criminals in the media. Number one on protection of privacy. What did I told you inside of this class? The biggest argument or premise that they came is that how media, by like exposing it to the general public, can create a support to a certain minority cases or the federal justice system that could have certain people that have no power, for example. There are 2 responses to this. Number one, look, we can see that the world that we live in right now still has inequality towards POC, women, etc., poor people. But look, they picked the wrong solution making to what they brought, right? Because whether or not a case is televised is depending on whether or not the story is in demand. Therefore, when you are talking about minorities who has no popularity, for example, or power whatsoever, will never be televised. 2 reasons why. Number one, because therefore, the way for us to gain justice for minority or victims or suspects is to demand directly to the big government, right? That's the first reason. But secondly, to riot into the street, for example, to make a charity donation raised by the movement, or etc. All of these media coverages are done by the movement themselves, not because TV or media channel, because TV or media channel has a certain consideration when airing something. For example, they cannot air a too radical movement, for example. They cannot air unknown figures because they will not create a big attention. We cannot rely on TV as our sole our sole resources to help minorities, for example. There's that needs to prove to you why TV or media channels will cover your news in the way that you want them to be, where you are still a minority social movement, for example. Because the nature of TV or media channel is to create sensationalism, right? They have a profit-driven nature. But secondly, the kind of like premise that they told you is that like, media fear public, therefore they would create a good objective news. Look, this is untrue. Media is the one who control what is put out. This is why our mindset is influenced by what we are seeing on our everyday phone and television. Although we can criticize them, for example, on certain platforms, but how can we know that it is one-sided when the information itself is being given by the media themselves? Even if people can, for example, grow suspiciousness, it is still a minority number of people. They need to explain why we can collectively change the trajectory of how the system of TV or media channel work. But lastly, I want to flip this stage, right? Because there's nothing to exactly prove to you on how all of the support will always be a good or positive thing. It's not just like a liberal society that you live in. Like, for example, in Indonesia, we are still conservative towards sexual assault cases, for example, or as a minority cases, right? At best, there is only one certain country where majority are already liberal. Like, for example, the justice for George Floyd in the USA. But moreover, on how the pressure of being known by the white public, the fact that your family are being exposed could create some pressure for the witness to give an actual objective statement, and this could hamper their mindset, right? But lastly, is on how this is exclusive on our side. So this kind of like social movement can do it via Twitter, via Instagram, for example. That is not necessarily a media kind of like coverage, but something that we can just put out ourselves. And this is much better because at least we can create it the way we want it to be, and no bias for a certain kind of like media channel. But to weigh into this rebuttal is that this is when our side won, right? Because we actually protect the true value and essence of CGS without doing something inappropriate, like letting the public that has no to zero kind of like knowledge to have a say on a certain cases that is like incredibly crucial. But secondly, it told you that society deserves to know what is going on. Transparency, the responses. Number one, I think that we need to highlight on how untrue and unexplained it is, right? They have never even provided to you one principle to declare why we actually need to know it on what is going on to the court when we are not A, family, or B, the witness, right? Or any other actor that has a specific relation, a special relation to the public, right? Therefore, all of these things are only a practical benefit, right? But let's rebut it anyways. Right? Even if they told you that transparency is good, look, this can be flipped, right? Because how under your side you're going to ensure that the pressure from the media, the bad comments, and the judgmental society can make the witness witnesses or the kind of like people to give a great assessment, like I told you before, like they will create some sort of like statement that is influenced by the media, or the jury duty are going to read the news and think that the suspect is already wrong even when the trial is started or when the trial is still going in the middle or bad, right? What's good or bad is morally gray, and we cannot really dictate it, right? Because we are not in a full kind of like information of what is going on. Comparative on our side, we give the full responsibility to the police or the responsible institution that has a value of transparency, that they will do a press conference that based it on information, not like a flashy clickbaity news. That's what we'll under our side do. But second question on our rehabilitation, right? They told you that the criminals will do a public apology, and the public will feel doing what the criminals feel, and that they somehow deserve it. Two reasons, two responses to this. Number one, look, trials are still trials. This is not an end result of a certain case. For example, even until right now, we still don't know what the true motive behind Brigadier J case. Therefore, their side, the decision is created by how the public shape its opinion on what is currently being given to them, right? And we create as a conspiracy theory by like adding some kind of information that isn't necessarily needed, but they just do it to support their theory. For example, this derive what actual truth and theory is, which create a massive misinformation to the public. This is harmful because incredibly this is way the public opinion. They will follow whatever the media follow without having an actual information. But secondly, on the their side, these criminals will not be a functional member again because now they're already been cornered and unaccepted by the media that has shaped this kind of like bad personality for them by them, right? Moving on to my extension, right? My extension would talk about how this would create an aromatization of certain criminals. Look, allowing camera into the courtroom means that the criminal will be getting a lot of attention and spotlight, right, panel? But furthermore, it's when these criminals are being seen as like a good looking or has a justified motivation or that look cool on doing it. Like, for example, a school shooter. Secondly, the internet has a weird group of people who idolize and worship these criminals because they thought that what they are doing kind of is like relatable and they not like what the motivation of the criminals. All of these are caused because you allow the criminals to gain spotlight, which leads to a cult offense for the criminals. This is harmful for two reasons. Number one, this is disrespectful to the victims. While the internet is making TikTok about Freddy Sambo being handsome or school shooter being edgy and good looking, the victim has to sit down and watch the trials going on when the fans are doing kind of like support for the criminals. Secondly, or this backlash the initial intention of deterrence, but rather expose this type of people who maybe resonate the same way with the criminals, and let them to have the ambition and motivation when they're constantly being exposed, and this could lead to bad behavior. We're incredibly proud to propose. Sorry.
Thank you so much, DPM, for that fine speech. So we call on BLO. The floor is yours.
Kevin,
Yeah?
Kevin, can you excuse me? I want to go to toilet for 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. That's
Okay.
okay.
Hello, I'm back.
Okay, thank you, Kak Akbar, for the confirmation. To continue on this debate, DLO, first yours. Here.
Just checking if I'm audible and visible.
Yes, audible and visible.
Right. Wait. Okay. I'm
disconnect.
Did he disconnect or is it just me?
Yeah, he's disconnected. Sorry.
Okay.
Let us reconnect.
I'm sorry. I get disconnected. Okay. PI preference. Unmute yourself. No specific gender pronouns. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Let's take all of their scenario. Lah, aku ke disconnect lagi. Enggak. Hah?
No, you're clear.
Oh ya?
Yeah.
Zoom-ku nggak ada. So sorry. Oh ya, restart. Can I restart my speech? Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Let's take all of their scenario, right? Number 1, when the moment the person that we are trying to prosecute is actually non-guilty. If we caught a non-guilty person, then we expose their bad things and their identity. We told you even in the worst case scenario, there is a public mocking, but there is a room for clarifications, at least on our side of the house, that it is super important and something that is effective to begin with, because you are also said that this media is somehow talking about, sensational issue and etc. Thus, we say that this clarification is most likely is going to be effective to begin with. Number 2, when the moment they are guilty, exactly it's going to be good, because at the end of the day, we expose the things that actually make them guilty to begin with, right? Number 3, on how, let's talking about minority, that they told you about how then there is minority will not get any demand, etc. I think exactly on your side of the house, you will not have incentive to demand minority because you don't leak the trials to begin with. So that's why we say that minority will not go to CGS, and they will distrust the CGS on your side of the house, because they don't even think that CGS is something that is trustable to begin with, right? One independent rebuttal to their extension. Their extension is actually talking about there is a romanticizations of good-looking perpetrator to begin with, right? I think that there is no way that this case is actually true, right? The case is still going on anyway and going to be prosecuted anyway. Even like handsome Jeffrey Nicole, even like those handsome Brad Pitt, for example, is still going to be prosecuted anyway once they do drugs, for example, right? Support, moreover than that, they told you about how then support for the victim is going to be gone, because they are idolizing the perpetrator to begin with, right? I think it's something that is super unrealistic, because it's not disrespecting, because the victim will get the vulnerability as a victim to begin with. So that's why the majority was still empathetical anyway. Thus their extension is down, right? Several response before going to my extensions. Number 1, about how they always told you about how then media will do the wrong exposure and try to siding to one party, for example, in that kind of court, right? Four things to neglect this point, right? Number 1, about how then super wrong. It's going to be super wrong characterization coming from proposition side of the house, because we say that media coverage on trial is someone not siding, because media do not have capacity to predict the verdict in the very first place, right? Because all media do is actually to put streaming on YouTube, is to actually put streaming on televisions and tell the details what is actually happening on trials, not to predict the verdict and what is actually what actually happened during the jurors is already put the decisions on and mengetuk palu and etc. Right? Number 3, number 2, on how they also assume that media will use clickbait, for example, this is still manageable anyway, because right now, like media corporation have the competitive market to begin with. So therefore, if they do wrong, the other media company and society especially will try to attack them, for example, because they do a clickbait. They're trying to fool them out, for example. So they will not do that harm to be at the end of the day, right? Number three, then, on how then, even if the worst case scenario is it happens related to it related to department like police can give a clarifications, and there is a counter as well from another media that will not make your society like foolishly agree to that point to begin with, right? But number four, on last point, right? We think that society right now already like consume with a lot of accessibility of media. So that's why we show you on how then like society actually can access as well. So they will read more credible media rather than declaim to begin with, right? So that's why their point about media do wrong exposure and citing is somehow not true. Number two, on how then they say that, oh yeah, it will make victim and witness could not give their best testimony due to the media exposure of pressure, etc. Number one, on how then it is not true. On trial, they have huge and big interest to get justice, ladies and gentlemen. If they don't want to get that justice, they don't go to court, right? They like that, they don't want to, they don't want to, punish unfairly and victim too, right? At the end of the day, so they will still pragmatically testify as best as they can, right? Number two, on how they have a psychological assistance from the lawyer and psychologist if it is necessary to calm them down before the testimony, right? That's why it's something that is common in trial. If you need time, to delay the trial, for example, because it's something that is common for you to feel, gugup and etc. Number three, on how they told you about, people with bias and harm the rehabilitations. I think that the question is that what is the correlation upon this, right? I think the rehabilitation would be decided by expert judge anyway. So the amount of punishment so the amount of punishment to rehabilitate them will be fairly decided to begin with. So that's why it's going to be proportional punishment to begin with, right? So that's why no need to worry about this. Number four, on how then they told you about how that judge will get media influence and to give the verdict, because they will follow the pragmatic feeling of getting media attention, etc. Number one, this is somehow like two scenario based analysis. Recognize that all the judges has their own long experience to handle their case as well, right? They have vote and a promise to their ethical code to be justice. Number two, moreover, this is in Indonesia, which has civil law system, so the verdict will be based on national constitutions, not public opinion. That's why judges will less likely to assess subjectively, but they need to concern to the law books to begin with, right? To UUD, etc. Number three, on how there is an appeal court that as well, appeal court to evaluate the previous court if the court is doing something wrong. Number four, on how in status quo judges will get warning, and if their promo, maybe like verdict, maybe like verdicts, their verdict is so far away with the result to appeal court, for example, right? So all judges will have strong pragmatic interest to be objective to begin with, right? So let's jump to my directly to my extension on how the media will operate on oppositions, on how we help the quality of trial and justice system on the verdict, right? We told you there are vulnerable victims that they are unable to prove the evidence with visum or medical data. This costs a lot to prove that to prove that, right? Even when you want to look for a concrete evidence such as autopsy, it's so expensive. Moreover, they are unable to hire a very good lawyer that is able to win them in the court. Addition, expert witness that also like they rarely have capacity on that. We told you how on opposition we solve this because we are hungry of attention and what the attention will be used for. Three things. Number one, we characterize a lot of people like whom actually try to help to open donation to pay the medical checkup for victim. Why? Because media like want to expose sensational issue like you said, right? Like a corruption case, murder case, etc. We taught you how then it will attract sympathical feeling once they watch, for example, because society wants justice. Society like a justice darling to begin with, right? Number two, on how like good lawyer, not government, free lawyer that will assist you to the fullest. But we talk about Hotman Paris, other big lawyer that want to win the case to so that their pragmatic interest to get social appreciation and media attention achieved. That's why so proud to propose.
Thanks so much for that case, DLO, to close the substantive of government whip. For yours here.
Okay, am I audible?
Yep, crystal clear.
Okay. POI preference is your chat. If I void your chat, I will not take the POI, and yeah. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. All of the rebuttals that they throw to us only neutralizing our case at the surface level and only proves that it also will happen under both sides, but they have never explained and proved to you the alternative to fix the problem itself. We proud to win. 3 points of framing why we win in this debate. Firstly, they told you about transparency and under their side, medias can be professional, right? Medias are having an interest to make a profit, to make people interested, to trap by their heading, etc., etc. Therefore, this is not likely. But B, transparency can be exposed when the case is clear, right? What is something that opposition never realized is one, this is not a solved case or clear suspect when the suspect is already right. Meaning that what is crucial right now in this debate, this is not a solved case. Therefore, this is something that a case that still be scattered and black and white. Therefore, to make the case solved effectively, we cannot expose all of the transparency due to the fact that this case is still black and white and not clear, right? But to make the case progress is hindered as how at first people put the blame to Baradae, then people blaming another actor, which is like Sambo and etc. Right? This is the exact reason why Indonesian society is so problematic and inconsistent if they see this media, because they only see what they want to see, right? But the fact that Rain told you that they are not professional or even know 100% the case about the case, therefore, even if you want transparency, it should be only accessed by people who are neutral and understand the case, right? Under opposition side, they cannot prove why people can be neutral under their set of house. Therefore, all of their benefits should be false. Lastly, even if there is a room of clarification that the second speaker told you, yeah, okay, even if we have to buy this, will this even work under your side of the house? They never response why room of clarification will work. Because if people already biased and already mad, how can you do clarification? Even though you do clarification, people will still mad at you anyway, so that is useless, right? Basically, worst case versus best case, right? Even if under our worst case, people not trusting us and people cannot involve in this is fine as long this didn't hinder the progress of the case, right? The progress of the case is something that you should take a note, because this literally impacting the suspect and the case and the whole case, the victim's life, sentences, etc., etc. Even if we have to compare to the best case, which is people can involve, there is transparency and something like that, there is no guarantee that all people pointing out the right people under their case, because this is not like a solved case, and this is only like this is something that we're debating about is ongoing trials, which mean that the case is not yet solved, right? We flip their extension when they try to say that about how unfair people can able to pay expensive judges, etc. Exactly. Thank you to supporting our case, because exactly when people are not able to like pay Hotman Paris, for example, people will not hear them. But when these suspect or perpetrators are able to like pay Hotman Paris in their cases, Indonesian society will most likely hear to Hotman Paris, because they already have a bias towards the judges, towards the lawyer itself. Therefore, under their side, it will be even more unfair because society have a bias towards certain people, right? But thirdly, they listing a lot of problems as how no transparency, etc., but no solvency coming from their side as how they are able to stop bias media, hindering the case progress, etc. They need to explain why society can be that objective and morally correct to help the case, right? If they never explain this, why society are professional and fulfill the parameter, discredit all of their benefit. What is the change under your side is not clear until the end of the debate. They literally strawmanning our case as how their side told you people are afraid to speak up. Why they have to be afraid if no one will know about this, right? Under your side, people afraid to speak up because they're afraid that they will ditimpukin garbage or sampah pointed out by society, because society is like being a monster and mad to them, right? Therefore, under your side of the house, these people will most likely not talk objectively in the court, and this is like hindered the progress of the case, right? Two questions that I will address in this debate. First question, which side hindered the case progress? Second question, which side can solve the current problem, right? First question, which side hindered the case progress? They told you one point, which is society deserves to know transparency so that the case not left solved and misconduct trials and do check and balance, right? The premise is so wrong. Some of courts have to be private for the sake of the case. Like some cases can be exposed publicly, like people can watch on the court, but some cases are not,
Clarifications.
right? They're not equipped. Therefore, they only portray one case of the spectrum and they try to make every case is exposed, right? But the no check and balance, it won't happen because firstly, judges are also afraid to be crushed by society if they're like having bad decision, especially when judges are also swearing to not be biased. But secondly, even if they are biased, that's not it even more better under our side, because under your side, these judges are pressured by society to make the fault into the suspect while the case is still not clear. Therefore, bias is even more bad under their side. We break the deadlock about bias, right? But second point, when they told you that less people will trust us, right? I don't understand why just because court said that this case is sensitive, then less people will trust our court. Because even right now, opposition cannot also fix society's trust. It happens symmetrical under their side. But exactly when people are not trusting you and they already have bad assumption towards court, that court is not fair and not bad, this is the moment when society will become a monster protesting to judges and court complaining and run the progress of the case. Therefore, if people are not like trust the court, you should not expose that, because people will actually mad at you and demanding and pressuring you, right? Therefore, if people are less trusting court, what you have to do is not by sugarcoating them by exposing everything, but to solve the case fairly and effectively, to give compensation to society, to contribute to them by solving the case effectively, right? So transparency and trust is not that yet important again by their case, right? But thirdly, when they told you that victims closure, they can fix injustice, I already told you about this, but this comes from individual and this is not exclusive, right? If people are biased to suspect, then why injustice can also happen under your side? So explain that, because if you only play best case, then judges is kind and society is kind. We don't need this debate, right? Therefore, what is the tipping point? Why we win? Rain told you several good explanations about how we can solve the current problem right now, but how we can solve the public bias. And I will give you a good extension about how there is a romanticization, and this romanticization only being strongman by their case, like saying there is no romanticization, right? Look, if romanticization happen, then the victims or the suspect will not even feel guilty. Therefore our case still stands until the end of the debate. Then how you weigh this debate, right? Their base case is they told you that there is no transparency and no trust and something like that. This is not like equal with our benefit, because our benefit is more important and exclusive due to the fact that this case is not yet clear, and the fact that you cannot expose everything, because like if people are already like not trusting you, then how they can like be objective, right? Because they have like irrational, emotional, and how they like tend to see these media as something that they're like emotional and they can be mad. This is the moment where we don't have to actually expose everything to them. And therefore, we already proved to you, one, a society is not fulfill the parameter why they can help the case, because they are not like able to give objective opinion. But second, it will only hinder the progress of the case. Therefore, we are so proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gokweek, for your speech. To close the entire substantive of Upweek for shares here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yep, perfectly.
Wait, let me organize my paper and final check my docs and also setting my timer. So meanwhile, gender pronouns he, him, and also POI preference is through audio, but please do not badgers. If I don't answer means that I don't accept, okay? Okay, so starting my speech in 3, 2, and once. It's very sad for team government to just speak and stick with the worst case scenario. Just justice instrument will be able to be influenced rather than being objective and independent because of this media decision whatsoever. If this worst case can be tackled at the end of the day, then we can take down and we take ALSA 2022, ladies and gentlemen, right? Few framings then on my speech, right? Number one, about vulnerables and whatsoever. What they did in this particular clashes or in this particular discussions is that they try to frame the problems as if like they are the ones who are afraid of media and whatsoever. Meanwhile, this is like the not real problem. The vulnerables are weak because the justice system they have no backup. For example, their opponent is majority. For example, their opponent is, for example, like strong government member, for example, and whatsoever. Right. The reason why they are vulnerable is because of this. Right. But secondly, they talk about how then POC women as example. This our solution is a wrong solutions because minority will not get attention. For example, we should demand directly to the government. Their mechanism is exactly more not for example not effective just because for you to make the demand on government, the prerequisite of that is that you have numbers, for example, right? But if we want to get attentions, your prerequisite is that you can be sensational, for example. In our world, we know that to get attention, for example, we need to get sympathy, we need to be the victims and whatsoever, because a lot of people in even like semi-progressive countries are, for example, more liberal and progressive or empathetic to the minorities, for example. The comparative is that even if this is lesser than the support to the majority, for example, the comparative is that they do not get they do not get support at all, for example, because the trial is closed and not get exposure at all, ladies and gentlemen. That's why with this framing alone, we can win the debate, right? But let's add more reasons to that, right? First clashes like there, whether or not the attentions is harms towards the justice system or a cure to fix a broken justice system step by step, ladies and gentlemen. They always keep repeating the ideas that media has the interest to get profits and whatsoever, but they didn't prove three things. First, the ethical codes to tell the truth. Media have the ethical codes to tell the truth, for example. There are also good medias, like for example, Narasi TV, not whatsoever, to criticize the media, for example, right? This is like the media that these younger generations or liberals actually trust, for example. That's why they can have the code to tell the truth. But this also make the point not harmful, because there is going to be other medias who still believes in truth, for example, the ethical medias that still believe in truth going to expose the truth, for example, right? But B, if there is going to be a bad reputation, right? If police and justice institutions clarify the case to be not true, and the media, the society, for example, criticize the media and whatsoever, then they will lose, for example, the profits, right? Exactly, we flip the characterizations. But thirdly, other media companies will attack this, for example. Other media companies will make these competitions due to their interest to competition, for example. They want to create more exposure to another POVs, for example, right? So that's why the points already false. But second claim, they told you about how then it will make victims and witnesses could not give best testimony to media exposure. These are very sensitive issues and whatsoever, right? Three responses to this. Number one, literally in our mechanism, the media will still obey the law. If it is like very sensitive and very close to law, the law will decide that this is a close at the trial, for example. So that's why they will not expose this, for example. There is still rules and regulations in these cases, right? But secondly, it's not true. On trial that they have a huge and big interest to get justice. They don't want to be punished unfairly and victim too. So they'll still pragmatically testify and best as they can, for examples, right? So I think that they have no incentive to actually do that, right? Because they want to win in the court and whatsoever. This is for their families and this is for the goodness of the people and whatsoever, right? But secondly, I think that this helps victim even more if we expose this by comparative, right? Because we can, a lot of attentions, meaning that we can hire like professionals or saksi ahli for strengthening cases onto finding the truth, on finding the truth, for example, like my speaker already told you, never engage by team proposition at the end of the day. Good lawyers, for example, that can engage to this law and whatsoever, right? But they then say, then Hotman or like good lawyer will like will help the wrong or bad guy. Three response for this. Number one, Hotman or like good parent will still consider his credibilities and future reputations to select the client, ladies and gentlemen, right? So that's why most likely he wants a good reputation. So that's why they will siding with the side that have more credibility, for example. Secondly, he's a rich, so he is not that thirsty of a client that have a lot of money, for example. Thirdly, even if that's happened, that's probably fine. Means that Hotman is a good lawyer, could hold a better justice to protect the suspect, for example. Like the suspect will be protected from any torture or forcing cases, for example, right? So that's why I think that we tackle the debate on cure of the justice system, ladies and gentlemen, right? And second clashes whether or not the citizens have the right to do and to get this information at the end of the day. My timer is dead. It's like 5 minutes, but like, okay, if this time, if it is over time, then told me, right? Second clash, whether or not the citizens have the right to these informations or what's not, right? Their biggest point in this was like the privacy, right? Privacy is being outweighed by the rest of informations of the people, mainly because at the end of the day, society actually get the impact of this. For example, poor people actually, poor people, for example, actually poor people actually being impacted by corruption cases and whatsoever, right? Secondly, in utility, this not matter. For example, in utilitarian metric, I think that this is not comparative to the harm that it creates. For example, the weighing of this debate becomes then on how, for example, firstly, we reform justice system by a lot of criticisms from the for example, the elites, like good lawyers and whatsoever, the experts in law, for example, about how then a lot that we learn that the law in Indonesia is very biases, for example, or the law in Indonesia is very like flexible and ambiguous, for example, have an ambiguous metric, for example. So so most likely that we have a benefit more and more benefit that never getting engaged at all by by governments, right? But secondly, we think that all of our harms is at the end of the day repairable by clarifications and whatsoever, by time flies that so that help the victims that are harmed is going to be healing themselves, for example. But then the harms in their side of the house is irreparable at best, at worst, because all of their harm is like the justice, for example, the government will going to be structurally oppressing the poor people, the poor and the vulnerables, for examples, right? Trying to make them afraid to be speaking, for example. Indonesian people would not have any incentive to reform the law because they don't know that the law today is really that harmful. For example, we're talking about PKS law who can be reformed because people have education about how Indonesian's law is not really protecting the women, for examples, right? So that's why I think that the harms in our side of the house is far lesser and can be mitigated, for examples, right? It is, and secondly, we think that misunderstanding and speculations happens literally in their side of the house, because if you close this law, meaning that they're only going to be a whistleblowers, for examples, or not credible informations, for examples, right? Meaning theory conspiracy and all of that and all of misinformation speculations will happen on their side of the house. The distrust, even if the distrust is going to be symmetrical, then at the very least we can know that the system is already that broken, for example, and this will trigger a lot of more attention to these problems. And that's why we're likely to create a political capital for these issues, for example. So that's why the law will more likely to be reformed on our side. Proud. So
Thank you so much for that very fine speech. Upwip, to close the entire up bench of the flyer for yours here.
Check, I'm audible.
Let's pick one sentence.
This house would significantly limit media coverage on ongoing trial.
Yep.
Going to start my reply in 3, 2, 1. Two things on top of all. Number one, I think exactly we need to highly expose this kind of media to begin with, since it, people are appreciating transparency. We told you that there is a public trust because we tell them what happened in the field. Moreover, we erase the incentive to play behind the back, because if they do behind the back game, for example, and there's a suspiciousness and there's a questions and there is a questionable verdict, that it will lead into public discourses that will try create a distrust to the justice system. So that on the comparative on our side, when we try to expose all of that, we can safely assume that people will lessering the incentive to do like behind the back game to begin with. Number two, they told you on how then transparency only benefit neutral people. I think like proposition never proof. Why then at our marginal benefit, when people know the case, that they never try to tackle on it, they try to at the end of the day, we are trying to make the case people are educated on our side of the house, right? Which comparatively on their best case, like even when we are trying to significantly limit the justice systems, means that all our benefit proven exclusive. I have one question in my speech on whether or not it is necessary to, highly expose on media coverage on ongoing trial. They come to this debate by saying three things. Number one, on how then it's create a public bias. Second, on how media interested to try to portray something that is misleading. Number three, on how judge will try to blatantly and blindly follow to what media will say because they get the influence because they are media darling, etc. We taught you four things on this. Number one, about people bias. We say that people bias is something that is not relevant, right? They only throw this burden with there is no reason why public bias is something that is bad inherently. I think we proved to you on how then media exposure is something that is important. We told you we need education and we need media to help us, right? There's another media that will try to expose the counterbalance. We are also try to, give an education to other people. Thus, at the end of the day, it will give something good anyway. Moreover than that, media coverage on trial is not siding because, media do not have capacity to predict the verdict, right? All media do is put on streaming on YouTube and tell the details what happened on trial. And moreover than that, media also do not know whatever actually happens and what will happen in the future, right? But second, then, and even if in the worst case scenario that happens, media portray a misleading story and and all of that, right? I think that department like police can give a clarifications. We told you that, and there is a counter as well coming from another media that will try to clarify this kind of issues at the end of the day. Moreover than that, we told you that society right now can assess it so well. So at the end of the day, they will read more credible media rather than they claim, for example, right? They will try to look for another information from another sources, for example, right? We told you that no response. Number three, judge will not follow the media influence. Like all the judges has their own long experience to handle the case as well. They have voted and promised to their ethical code to be just to the justice to begin with, and there is no response on that. Right? Moreover than that, there is OOD, there is a law of books, for example, regulate all of the law, and that's why if you violate that law, and you will be punished as a judge to begin with, right? So there is moreover than that, there is appeal court that will try to trying to make a better decision, etc. And moreover than that, in status quo, judges will get warning if their verdict are so far away with the result of appeal court. So all the judges will have strong pragmatic incentive to be objective to begin with. So that's why no reason for judges to not to follow the media influence that is so bad from their side of the house, right? Number four, lastly, on how they question on our prophecy on our prophecy. My first speaker literally told you that how on our second mechanism, to be specific, media will follow the law rules. So if the trial is closed, like trial divorce cases or personal cases, media will not do streaming, just waiting for the comment after conflicted actor punish, for example, to the trial, right? So that's why on the underside of the house, we prove you underside, they will not get any exposure at all. At the end of the day, it's something that is bad. We're so proud to oppose.
Thank you so much for the reply speech. Of reply to close this entire grand final government reply. For yours, here.
Am I audible?
Yep, perfectly audible.
Okay. Wait, I'm going to put on my timer. Wait. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Amber Heard is the live proof of a result that the power of internet can shape how the result of a supposedly fair court is. When you let powerful people gain spotlight and attention, this is when their groupies can spread a highly strawman and scared case by how one they want to shape the narrative to society is. With that, media is an incredibly awful author for rationality to be expected in. Shame on all. 3 reasons why they're already lost in this debate. Number one, their side doesn't want to engage into all of our characterization and case by creating their own characteristics. Look, they cannot just simply say that media will air minority case and gain justice, or there will be an education for the public. All of this somehow has not happened in real life. Minority case gain justice through their own movement. Education is somehow just like a fear mongering that every human already has the fear to not go to jail or get penalty by their own nature. This is any exclusive and insignificant. But secondly, they have big logical gaps on why public deserves to know what is going on. Your benefit means nothing when A, there is no principle to support, but actually a principle to go against what you want, but also B, how even your benefit lacks likelihood, like fair justice system. Give us one form of a case getting fully justified at the very end, you made up your own story. Thirdly, the reply at the end told you that our judge will not be biased by the media. This will kill the whole premise, because then how can judge listen to random people rants on your side when they didn't even listen to a big media sort of like channel? I don't even know what they're saying. But moving to the conclusion, right? First, on the purpose of criminal justice system. By the list, number one, I feel like their case revolves around the fact that public can demand justice based on trial. But when the trials is in itself is not something that's like a full end result, and public will keep on changing their opinion based on what they see and what is the current trial progress is, they don't explain to you why public has the capability to be that rational and good. But secondly, their case is shamefully gradual. Only at WIP when we get clarity on why vulnerable people does not have a backup currently. But even if you buy this is still bad for two reasons. A, then what is the function of judges if you decide what's wrong or bad? Look, what you don't have as a general public is an access to the full information and direct contact via questions. But also B, I give you lengthy rebuttals on how minority justice happen in the both world, because it is something that is like independently or grassrooted by the movement, for example. But lastly, right, under their case about we need backup because the opponent can hire expensive lawyer, it easily can be flipped, because good arguments can be given by lawyers, which also affect the public trust, but also be likable or popular lawyers also sway public no clear accessibility for their solution. Why we win? Rain give you layers of explanation on certain principle that is needed for CGS. 3. Number one, on privacy. The potential of unnecessary info that has nothing to do with the case getting in. The doxing potential for the family members. All of these are incredibly crucial and have been left unresponded until the end of the reply. Therefore, our principles still stand until the end of the debate. But secondly, on impartiality, right? The reasons why we have judges and jury is that we cannot give massive amount of people the power to decide, because that's my hakim, because it is irrational, right, and ineffective. But a number of responsible actors who has the ability and obligation to do it. They don't explain why public can be always morally correct or intellectual or charitable, but unfortunately our brilliant extension about romanticization that has not been correctly rebutted, right? The weight is on 3. On number 1, on the after duty, but second, on the better likelihood that we provided to you, but third, on the significant, right? Without media, they even told you that it is fine that they will not buy it. Therefore, there are no significance in their argument. But under our side, there is a significant differences when you have a media covering the news and letting people access information that can harmfully attack the people that is in the kind of like court. But second question on the minority, right? Why do you lose? Number one, there are no explanation. Is that like after protesting to the judges or criminal justice system, what will the judges do, right? How can the judges follow what you say and they just can like suddenly change the decision based on what the current society told you and how scared the public opinion is? But like secondly is on how they told you that there will be less people who trust us. Two responses. Number one, I don't understand why just because court said this case is like sensitive, the less people will trust our case, because even right now op cannot also affect society trust. But secondly, therefore, if people are less trusting court, what they have to do is not by sugarcoating them, by letting the media who has the intention of journalism to give you the information, but also on the other side is to do it by a press conference. Incredibly proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Government Reply, for that speech. And so that marks the end of this year's ALSA UE High School Grand Final. Both of you may virtually shake hands. And now I think for the judges, will we be given a breakout room by the committee?